Imagine sitting in a quiet diner on the edge of a small town, the kind of place where the smell of fresh coffee and sizzling bacon mixes with the low hum of chatter. Now imagine watching something that makes your heart stop. A young girl, barely in her teens, sitting quietly at a corner booth, her wheelchair tucked close to the table, her eyes lowered as if trying to make herself invisible. Then, out of nowhere, a group of older teenagers swagger in, loud and arrogant, and instead of leaving her alone, they decide to make her the target of their cruelty. It begins with mocking words, sharp laughter meant to sting, and then an open-handed slap that echoes across the diner, silencing forks mid-air and freezing conversations mid-sentence. Nobody moves. Nobody says a word. It's one of those moments where the world seems to shrink, where time slows and you wonder, will anyone do something? Or will she be left alone to bear it? That question grips you because what happens an hour later changes everything. The girl's name was Emily. 14 years old, born with cerebral palsy, her wheelchair had become both her shield and her prison. Her mother worked 2 jobs to keep them afloat, and this small diner was their special spot, a place where Emily could treat herself to pancakes and hot chocolate after school. She loved the little things, the red leather booths, the jukebox in the corner, the bell above the door that jingled when someone walked in. For Emily, this diner wasn't just food, it was a piece of normalcy, a piece of belonging. But that afternoon, everything shifted. The bullies entered like they owned the place. 3 of them, 2 boys and a girl, faces full of smugness, voices dripping with mockery. They laughed at the way she held her fork, at the way her hands trembled when she tried to steady her cup. One leaned close, sneering, and before anyone could stop him, his hand cracked across her cheek. A sharp gasp rippled through the diner, but no one moved. The waitress froze behind the counter. The cook turned his head away, and the other customers looked down at their plates, pretending not to see. Emily's eyes filled with tears, not just from pain, but from the crushing weight of humiliation. The bullies left soon after, their laughter still hanging in the air like smoke after a fire. And Emily sat there, cheeks burning, dignity shattered, her small hands clenched in her lap. She wanted to disappear, but instead, she stayed. Something in her, some stubborn spark, kept her in that booth. She told herself she wouldn't let them chase her away from her favorite place. Still, every tick of the clock felt like a reminder that no one had stood up for her. And then an hour later, the bell above the door jingled. A group of bikers walked in, black leather jackets, heavy boots, tattoos, and beards that made them look like they belonged to another world. The diner seemed to shrink under their presence, conversations dying as every eye turned toward them. Emily glanced up, and for a moment fear flickered in her chest. But then one of them, a tall man with kind but weathered eyes, noticed her. He saw the redness in her cheeks, the tears she was still fighting back, the wheelchair tucked into the booth. His expression hardened, not with judgment toward her, but with fury at the unspoken truth he could already sense. They sat down, ordered coffee, and quietly asked the waitress what had happened. At first she hesitated, but the truth spilled out. The slap, the mocking words, the silence of the room. Order up. The leader of the bikers listened, jaw tight, his hands clenching into fists on the table. And then he stood, turned toward Emily, and knelt beside her booth. His voice was gentle when he asked if it was true. Emily nodded, her lips trembling, and for the first time since the bullies had walked out, she felt something other than shame. She felt protected. The bikers didn't roar with rage. They didn't storm out to hunt down the teenagers. Instead, they did something far more powerful. They chose to sit with Emily. They filled her booth with laughter and kindness, their rough voices telling jokes, their heavy hands clapping the table as they included her in their conversation. One of them taught her how to do a fist bump, another put a quarter in the jukebox and let her pick the song. Slowly, the humiliation that had weighed her down began to lift, replaced by something new. Dignity, belonging, even joy. The diner, which had felt cold and cruel an hour earlier, became warm again, filled with the kind of love that can only come from people who understand what it means to be underestimated. Word spread quickly through the small town. The bullies heard about it too. The image of Emily, surrounded by bikers who treated her like family, became a story no one could forget. And though no fists were thrown, no revenge was taken, the message was louder than any slap. She was not alone. No. From that day on, whenever Emily came to the diner, she was never afraid again. The bikers returned, sometimes they didn't. But she always carried the memory of that night with her. A reminder that kindness can wear leather jackets and ride on two wheels, and that courage sometimes looks like staying seated in a booth even after the world has turned its back on you. The story of Emily spread beyond the diner. It reached schools where teachers used it to remind students that silence can wound as deeply as cruelty. It reached homes where parents told their children that standing up doesn't always mean fighting back. It can mean simply sitting beside someone when they need it most. And it reached the bullies themselves, who never again dared to lay a hand on her. In the end, the slap was not the loudest sound that day. The loudest sound was the laughter of a disabled girl. An hour later, surrounded by unlikely protectors who showed the world that sometimes family is found in the most unexpected places.